Hello and welcome back to Otter Creek in Rio Grande. I thought, after 5 straight videos of me mucking around in a staging yard, you might like to see some trains running for a change of pace. And it also gives me a good chance to formally introduce the 482. This is Fujiyama K36 number 482. I'm not sure what year this run was. I'm guessing it's the late 70s, early 80s. As a matter of fact, the 482, the real machine, is still running today on the Durango in Silverton. My version's running really good. I just had a Tsunami 2 installed by Mark Guffrey at All Brass Back Shop. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name right. I apologize, Mark, if I got it wrong. But it's running really well. There's still a few issues with the front coupler. The back end of a Katie 714 actually hits the front truck. So I need to tweak on that a little bit, because when it goes through the diverging route of a turnout, it will derail whatever's in front of it, depending on, how that coupler's working on whatever piece of rolling stock's there. Now, I've also got my first passenger train. This is a Pacific Fast Mail 5-car set. I'm not sure what the year is. The set didn't come with any documentation, but it's got a baggage car, combination car, coach, a diner sleeper, and an observation car. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure which is which of those. I mean, some of them are kind of obvious to me, but I haven't researched anything on passenger cars or passenger service yet. But I'm planning on having at least a couple of passenger trains run on the finished railroad. I thought I'd go ahead and take a few moments and share my final thoughts on the construction of the Time Saver. Kind of a after-action review where I share my improves and sustains, kind of a military model of taking a look at what you did and what went right and what went wrong. So I'll start with my improves. The roadbed. I've mentioned this before, and it was kind of a real learning thing for me. As I move forward, I won't use roadbed in a town scene again, because it just caused a lot of problems with structure height and most notably the switch stands. So, from now on, I'll probably use cork straight out like I did in staging for my towns, and then not use any roadbed at all, because most of the time in a town area, you're not going to see any raised roadbed at all. The next thing that I'll touch on is the track. When I got the track laid on the roadbed, I kind of just, ignored the track for a while. And as a matter of fact, I didn't really mess with the track at all again until it came time to ballasting. I did a little bit of painting prior to the ballasting, but what I should have done is it should have been done all at once, or at least that's my opinion at this point. I should have painted, detailed, and weathered all of the track, just right behind laying it. I think I would have focused on the track at the time, and I would have ended up with a much better product that I ended up with. Because if you take a look at the track now, you can find all sorts of places where, I just could have done a better job of it, and I just didn't take the patience to apply, a detailed concept to the track. And the next time I lay track in a town scene, I'm definitely going to take the extra time to devote to that process before I move on to the next. I'll touch a little bit on the bench work as well. Now, I'm not dissatisfied with the bench work, but at the time that I was constructing the whole thing here, I wasn't planning on doing a large model railroad in what's now the railroad room. That area was going to be a recording studio, and I was maybe going to have, one wall that was going to be a shelf in-scale layout. So I would have approached the construction differently had I had, the vision to make the time saver a part of a bigger railroad. So I may not even put the time saver in the larger railroad, because there's going to be some issues probably with putting it in. I think I can overcome those issues, but one of the things that I'm wanting is another staging yard, and dropping beneath where the time saver is, I might have to end up doing some things that's going to make that a little more difficult. And again, even if I were to build this again today, I probably would have approached the joinery differently than I did. It worked out okay, but I think I could have done a better job than what I did. Another thing is the rock work, which there's not a lot of rock work here, but I definitely think that it needs more contrast and more color. Just to kind of stand back and look at it, it's basically one color. And, looking at real rock work, there's a lot more color and contrast that can be captured that I just didn't really do here. So I may go back and apply some washes and some different colors just to kind of see what I can come up with some point in the future. Now, the last thing I'll talk about is the groundwork, the dirt work and the grass work specifically. There's a whole nother level that you can go to when you do this kind of thing, and it involves painting, both with washes and dry brushing and the airbrush. There's several people out there that do a good job of showing how this is done. Uncle Night Shift, his channel is, I believe it's just called Night Shift, and he's an armor modeler, and he models mostly in 1/35 scale and 1/48 scale, but there's a lot of techniques that he makes use of that is translatable even to 1/87 scale. He actually paints all of his groundwork black after he gets the static dress put on. He paints everything black and then comes back in with an airbrush and paints over the grass. Another person that uses the airbrush really well for groundwork is Boomer Dioramas, the immersive model railroad. I think I touched on his channel in my last video. He does amazing work. You should really go check out what he's doing. His airbrushing of the groundwork and all of that, and his washes, just next level stuff. And I'm definitely going to try those techniques as I move forward. Now, if you do go check out Boomer's channel, be prepared to feel woefully inadequate in your modeling skills. This guy is just really a wonderful value for the model railroader. Now, if you're working on a large model railroad, be prepared to be beat up a little bit by him. He's strongly in the camp of you should do a shelf layout and complete it. And I subscribe to that thought to a certain degree, and everyone has a different way of thinking and processing and doing what they do, and we all have different goals. But his philosophy is one that needs to be listened to, especially if you're someone who likes model railroad theory. I don't know if that's even a thing, but if you like thinking about the process and that kind of minutia involved in the hobby, definitely go and check out his channel. So now we'll move on to the sustains, the things that I'm fairly well happy with, at least, those worth noting. The first thing is the backdrop. I went back and forth for quite a while as to whether or not I would purchase a printed backdrop and just throw it up back there. And those look great. I don't begrudge anyone from making use of them because they are really nice looking. I'm glad that I went ahead and painted. The experience of painting, throwing on some classical music and just seeing what comes out of the brush or the palette knife was just a really enjoyable experience. So I'm really glad that I went with that decision. And I can find things on the backdrop to pick apart. I think the scale of the mountain's probably too big for how close it is to the layout. And then there's the whole great big huge moon looking thing that should have been pushed way further back in the scene and been much smaller for the lack of color that's in it. But overall, I'm encouraged to keep moving forward with painting, and when it's all said and done, it's mine. It's what I did. It's not a photograph that somebody threw up back behind their layout, and I think there's great value in that. Wiring is another thing that I'm kind of proud of. Not that I did anything spectacular by any means, but if you were to take a look at the underneath side of the only two other model railroads that I attempted, you could see that I made leaps and bounds improvements on how the wiring was done. And I still have, some ideas moving forward. Again, I'm borrowing ideas from people that I think that have done outstanding work, because that's just how you learn. You find people that you really think they did things the right way, and then you emulate. So as I move forward, I'm going to try and improve on what I've already accomplished with the wiring and try and get everything really understandable to where it's easy to trace problems that might arise later down the road. Now, the last thing that I'll talk about is, I guess, maybe focus. I made a decision early on that I would complete the time saver before I moved on to anything else. Even despite knowing that I was going to have the larger layout, I could have very easily fallen into the trap of starting my staging yard and starting work somewhere else. I made a decision to complete this before I did anything else, and I'm glad I did. I see a lot of large model railroads out there that are in multiple various stages of construction and completedness, and that's fine. And I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging anyone and how they're doing what they're doing or what their process is. But for me, I wanted to find out for sure what it took to complete things at a level that I want them completed to. And I'm very glad that I did, because I learned so much in doing so. The time that it's going to take, and just, the process. And now the advantage is that I have a highly detailed, completed scene that has operational value. And so if I do get bogged down like with a staging yard that, is kind of overwhelming everything I'm doing at the moment, I can stop. I can take 3 steps back, line some trains up on the time saver, and operate in an area that is going to drive my desire to complete the rest of the railroad. I think there's value in being able to come back to something that inspires you to keep moving forward. So I guess what I'm saying, to anyone who's getting started on doing a model railroad, or maybe you're even in a position where maybe you're a little frustrated, pick a scene. It doesn't have to be a 2 foot by 8 foot. It could just be a building and a siding. Pick it and finish it. Do it to a level that you would like to see it at, and see what the outcome is. You might be surprised, and that alone might drive you to go back to what it is that's currently frustrating you, and have the drive and the inertia to keep going. So those are just my thoughts. Please leave a comment, especially if any of this hits home to you, or if you strongly disagree with it. I'd love to hear your comments. Generally, I get about 8 people that will leave a comment, and that's great. And I've had a few people send me emails. I strongly encourage sending the emails. If you have questions that you don't think are appropriate for the comment section, shoot me an email. It's there somewhere in YouTube land. I'd love to hear from you. So in the meantime, like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.